Hey friends! Today I want to talk to you about all things soil blocking. So whatever question you have or ever had about soil blocking, I hope this video is going to answer it for you. We're going to talk about what is actually soil blocking, why it's such a great method, how to do it. I'll show you my entire process. I'll give you a soil mixing recipe I use, and we'll talk also about how to water then those soil blocks moving forward. So I hope this video really truly answers all of your questions you ever had about soil blocking. If there is one question left, please drop me a comment and I'll get to it and hopefully answer it over there. So let's get going. Let's talk a little bit about the materials we need. Obviously, when we want to do soil blocks, we need something which can shape our soil blocks. I have here 3 different type of soil blockers which I use for multiple different varieties. So this is the little 3/4 inch soil blocker, or the mini blocker, which I use quite often and start mostly my flowers with. Then I have I think that's a 1.5 inch blocker. And you'll find all those links to those blockers also in the captions, of course. This is the one which I use most often for my vegetables. So this is the one where I start my tomatoes in, where I start my peppers in. They get potted up in a larger pot after that, but that works very well. And then from the moment I want to upgrade those mini seedlings out of those mini blocks into a bigger block, this is where I use this 2-inch soil blocker for, which has those dibbles, and with the little indents it creates, you can slide in those mini blocks right away. So this is something what we'll see today as well, because it's also time to upblock or pot up, however you want to call it, the mini blocks from my Lysianthus seedlings. So we'll have some examples there. Let me show you what I use as soil or as materials for my soil block mix. So we have here the pit moss plentiful, which I use as a soil media in the blocks. So that's what the blocks will consist most of, because it's peat free and better for the environment. So you can look up if you want to go peat free or not. Then next to it, I'm still looking for a compost blend which is peat free. So my soil blocks are not 100% peat free, but peat less. Let's just say it like this. So this is the Coast of Maine lobster compost, which I love and which is local here to us, which is really, really great. And then the other 2 ingredients which will come into the blocks is here the green sand and the rock phosphate. Those boxes go a very long way. So I started them or used them all season long last year, and I have a feeling the remainder in the box will be enough for me for my 2023 seed starting season. And then something which is more in material to help you with your soil block is you need a sifter. I have here a beautiful self-built premium sifter where I'm putting a video together on how we built that. But this sits on the boxes I have really, really nicely to sift the soil, because that is one thing or a step you do not want to miss with your soil blocks. You want to sift them to have the real consistency you need to get a good soil block consistency. And then in terms of other materials, I just have here this soil blocking tray, which I typically use to prepare the mix. This is really, really handy as well for all things seed starting. It's not the prettiest thing anymore after using it for 2 seasons already, but it always does the job. So let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about why I love soil blocking so much, why it is such a cool method to try out and see if you like it too. One of the main reasons why I like it, it's very, very space saving. So when you just think about starting with this little one, 20 seedlings, you can save a lot of space. That is particularly helpful when you have some seeds which are teeny tiny, don't need a large footprint to begin with. This can really be helpful to save a lot of seed starting real estate in your shelf, for example, right? And then the other things which are also really cool is with those soil blocks, you have a lot more air around the seedlings itself. So I'm actually not sure if that's the scientific reason, but it's proven that soil blocks grow the seedlings about 20% faster than in normal pots, which I can attest to because all of my seedlings last year when I tried out soil blocking, they were so fast, they ran out of the, they just ran away out of my schedule, and I was not prepared for how much faster they grow and become nice seedlings. So the cool thing with those little blocks is really it saves you time, it saves you space, and it saves you cleanup at the end. So, and not only with the small ones, but with all of the soil blocks. So this is really one thing. If I can eliminate some plastic in my life, I always go for it. Yeah. And I think it just also creates more healthy seedlings overall, because what those blocks do with the roots is they air prune them. So whenever you have in little root sticking out of a block, it gets basically redirected and ends up in a more solid root system overall, which you then can plant into the garden out, and it has a really, really great start into its life. Of course, the most important question I always get with soil blocking is, what's your mix? Let me tell you, I use the Lisa Mason Ziegler soil blocking mix. She's also known as the queen of soil blocking. I'll have some links to her resources in the captions as well. But that is pretty much the soil blocking recipe I started with, except that I'm using a peat-free soil medium, my pit moss, instead of peat moss. But what it is, 16 cups of the soil medium like pit moss, or if you just want to go with a peat moss, you can do that as well. 4 cups of compost. Both of them needs to be sifted. We'll go through that shortly. And then a 1/4 cup of the green sand and a 1/4 cup of the rock phosphate. Once you have it all mixed together, which we'll see as well in this video, then how we hydrate it is in a 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 parts of the soil mix versus 1 part of water to mix it together to really hydrate and saturate it well. I'm always happy for the suggestion of this 3-to-1 mix, because otherwise you could just go like this with the water and never know if you have a good water mixture or not, and that always gets you starting right away. Let's start with the sifting. So here's a great reason why you want to sift any type of soil material, because it has stuff in it, right? So what is pit moss? Pit moss is recycled paper material, which is kind of fun to think about. For me, it grew last year really, really well. I really loved all the results I'm seeing. I had always some seedlings with a seed starting mix and then pit moss next to it, and pit moss outperformed all of them. So this year I'm going full into it because I don't want to have to monitor many of my projects or many experiments anymore. So yeah, it's basically just a hardware cloth where I sifted through, so you can just put that over a container or a bin and start sifting, but do not skip that step. I can't repeat myself often enough for that. This will decide the success of your soil blocks or not. Yes, it feels like an, I don't know, boring, unnecessary step, but if you want to have your soil blocks sticking together, you gotta sift it. It's important. And I recommend always doing it just in a big bulk bin. This is why I have one bin dedicated to just sifted pit moss, for example. That will make it easy to mix the soil blend up when you need it and everything else. You can see here when you're done, you have a lot of large material still on. That's the nice thing when we are outside. Just dump it off the deck and carry on with it. And this is how nice and fluffy it is when it's actually sifted. Yeah. And compost is always a great example why you should sift it. Oh. because compost has a lot more large materials in it. Now we're mixing the mix together. I usually mix it all together in a pre-mixed box where I have then all my soil block mix ready to use when I need it for the seeds. I also like to use those clear plastic cups for measuring my cups. So we'll have 16 cups from the pit moss, 4 cups from the compost, a 1/4 cup of the rock phosphate, and a 1/4 cup of the green sand. All of this is very, very dusty, so doing that outside, or if you can't do it outside, then inside with a mask is what I would recommend, to not breathe that stuff in. Okay, let's go. Now for the fun part, the mixing. If you don't like playing in the dirt, gardening is not for you. You want to mix it so well that it's really looks like one soil in the end, one soil mix, right? So you should not see the compost or purely the pit moss anymore. It should be one really nice mixed through soil mix. And then we start to hydrate it. This is where I use the cup again. Remember what I told you earlier, it's a 3-to-1 mixture. So we have 3 cups of the soil mix versus 1 cup of water, which sounds a lot, and you will see it is a lot because you really want to be able to squeeze out the soil blocks. The most common mistake beginners make with the soil blocking is that the mix is not wet enough. Actually, I double up because I want to do some more soil blocks, so I do 6 and 2 water. And the water. So 6 cups in here, which means we do 2 cups of water. Again, that looks like a lot of water, but you will see it's totally fine. Pit moss also soaks up a lot of water, so that is really good. The other thing which is really important with a soil mix is to just let it sit and hydrate a little bit. Sorry for the background noise, my neighbor just decided to hack some wood here as well on this beautiful day. It's really important that you let that mix sit a little bit and hydrate. So I usually mix it up and let it sit for like at least half an hour to an hour. I think Lisa Mason Ziegler even recommends to let it sit for like 3 hours or so. And you will see it's like a good cake. It takes up the hydration and needs to be saturated, right? So it's the same with the soil blocks. And this is a really nice mixture, and you'll be surprised how much water comes out there, because when you squeeze it, it's supposed to have water running out of it. Then it's a good mixture. All right, we let that sit here for a little bit and come back in probably a couple of hours, also with hopefully better lighting conditions here, to finish this up and make some soil blocks. So let me talk a little bit about in what kind of trays I soil block in. So for all of those bigger soil blocks, like for example where I'm potting up my Lysianthus in those 2-inch blockers, what I like to use is those trays which are perforated, like those microgreen trays. I'm also trying out this year just the 1-inch ones. I have those 2.5-inch ones, which I used last year, but they felt like it was hard to get some airflow around the blocks, so I'm giving those ones a try. And the cool thing with those blocks or with those trays is that you can use them really easy to water. because I have underneath always like one of those closed ones or without holes. So here are all my soil blocks later in, and when I want to water them, I put water in the bottom one and sit that one inside of it and really let it soak in bottom water. And when they're all soaked, I just put them back. So I have like one tray with water filled where I just dip them in, and that worked usually really, really well for me. When I start those smaller ones, if I don't want to start very, very many of those smaller ones, I usually use takeout trays, because in those trays they fit twice very, very easily. And the nice thing about those trays is, last year what I learned my lesson with like having too many different varieties on one tray, and they weren't all germinating at the same time, so it was a little bit tricky to decide when do I take them out of the humidity dome versus let them in. So this year I want to have mostly only trays with the same type of plants, all like cosmos, all like zinnias, so that they have no trouble germinating all at once, so then I can take them out of the humidity dome. Yeah, but in the end you can use what you want. Watering those trays is fairly easy as well. You just water on the sides. As a matter of fact, I have actually a little video for you to see how I water every morning my Lysianthus. I always water just in the channels, swoop it a little bit around, and then it's usually all fine and good. All right, so let's do some soil blocks. What is important with the soil blocks is, again, let it hydrate. If the blocks don't stick together, it's typically because there's not enough water in. The water should not be an issue for us. What is also helpful is to have something for scraping with you. I usually have like a spatula, like a big, like one of those plaster spatula, but I have no idea where it is in our messy basement, so I hope it turns up again. Otherwise they're like $5 at Lowe's or so, but they are really, really nice because they make a really nice and clean edge when you scrape it off like that. But yeah, that is typically how you do it, and there's only one way to get good with the soil blocks, and that is practice. Try to take on some soil, push it down. When you have a lot of soil, I'll take it up and I need my right hand for that and scrape it off. You press this one down and pull that one up, and then you take them off. And this is how you press those beautiful little soil blocks. So again, press this one down while you pull this one up. And there we have another round of really nice soil blocks. And those ones are the ones I typically use for all kinds of flower seeds. So this is where my snapdragons, for example, go in. Yeah, nice. Look at that. The test, if it's a good one, I can bounce it around. Holds up. So I made 2 trays of big soil blocks. You can look at them a little bit closer here. Gorgeous. I'm going to take the party inside. We're running out of light and it's getting chilly here now that the sun is away. So I'll see you inside in a second. All right, I had to move the party inside. It got cold where we were running out of light, and I had to make dinner in between, right? Just to have a little bit real life. So as I showed you before I went inside, I made 2 trays of the large 2-inch blocks where I'm putting in my Lithianthus babies. And it's really super easy. I'm just putting them in, dabbling them a little bit inside so they are sitting nice and tight in them, but that's all that matters. So it's really not something special to do. If you have blocks which are not 100% perfect, I just brought a little bit of dirt with me inside to just like dabble a little bit dirt around if I have the feeling that they don't sit 100% or so. You can fill in those blanks with a little bit leftover dirt. But other than this, they get put in into the bigger blocks. What I love to do is to sprinkle vermiculite over the soil blocks. It helps them to retain the moisture on the top and usually helps to prevent things like fungus gnats and stuff. So I really like to do that. And then with the little blocks, I have here already my seeds, which are going into it. Those are all the cool flowers I showed you in the video just a week ago. Or 2 weeks? No, 2 weeks ago when you will see this one. And you can go and check back what those ones are. But those are really, really early started varieties which go into the garden a little bit earlier than my last frost dates. Hence the name cool flowers. They tolerate cool weather. And yeah, I hope this video was really all what you needed to know about soil blocking. If there is anything left which you might want to know or missed in the information here in this video, please leave me a comment. I'm really curious to hear those. And maybe we'll do a Q&A sometime in the future with questions we collected here for soil blocking. But I can highly recommend to give it a try. The soil blockers aren't the cheapest, but they will last you forever. I'll link those ones in the description as well. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this information-packed video with a lot of different shots. I certainly start to appreciate Laura from Garden Answer with all of their beauty different shots and how much work that takes. Anyway, if you want to see what all comes out of those soil blocks, subscribe here and watch another video. Thank you.